After being rescued by a nurse following a serious accident, the millionaire was paralyzed when he saw her necklace, the same one his daughter was wearing when she disappeared years ago. The winding road connecting Dallas to Houston vanished into thick fog as heavy rain battered the windshield of Michael Morgan's car. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, as if each raindrop were a painful memory he was desperately trying to escape. The car's dim headlights barely pierced through the darkness, and the rhythmic sound of the windshield wipers echoed like a metronome, marking the beat of his inner torment. Michael was traveling alone, as always. For the past 20 years, solitude had become his only faithful companion. Ever since Rebecca, his 2-year-old daughter, disappeared, his life had become an endless cycle of work and haunting memories. His wife, Mary, had left shortly after, unable to endure the pain and obsession that consumed Michael. All that remained of him was an unyielding desire to find Rebecca, a hope that refused to die, even when it seemed impossible. In the glove compartment rested an old photo of Rebecca. In the picture, the little girl smiled innocently, unaware of the storm that would soon tear her family apart. Around Rebecca's delicate neck hung a small necklace with a heart-shaped pendant, a gift from Michael on the day she was born. He believed that the pendant would accompany her throughout her life, serving as an invisible bond between them. But life had proven far too cruel for such naive hopes. Michael blinked, trying to focus on the road, but the memories pursued him like ghosts, clouding his thoughts. What if I had done something differently? He thought for the 1000th time. What if he had paid more attention that day? What if Mary had stayed? The what if was a monster devouring him from the inside out. Suddenly, dense fog rolled across the road like a curtain, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Michael tried to slow down, but it was already too late. The car skidded on a sharp curve, and he lost control. In the frenzy of spinning wheels and sliding tires, the deafening sound of metal colliding pierced the night, followed by a violent jolt. The world around him spun, and in an instant the impact struck. The car veered off the road, tumbling down an embankment before coming to an abrupt stop against a tree. The windshield shattered, and the seatbelt clutched Michael's body in a brutal embrace, saving him from something much worse. Pain surged through his chest, and his head throbbed intensely. The rain showed no mercy. Cold drops trickled down Michael's face, mixing with the blood dripping from his forehead. He struggled to keep his eyes open, but everything around him seemed to drift in a dark blur. The scent of wet earth and gasoline filled the air, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the sound of hurried footsteps and a distant female voice muffled by the rain. "Hey, are you okay? Can you hear me?" A soft yet urgent voice called out to him. Michael tried to respond, but all he could manage was a faint groan. He felt delicate hands on his face and noticed a figure leaning over him. It was a young woman with dark hair plastered to her forehead by the rain, her eyes filled with worry and kindness. She checked his injuries and pulse with the precision of someone used to saving lives. "Hang in there. I'm going to get you out of here," she assured him with determination. The woman struggled to pry open the mangled car door, wrestling against the weight of the twisted metal. After several moments, she managed to release Michael's seatbelt and carefully pulled him from the wrecked vehicle. Michael felt weak and dizzy, but something about the woman made him fight to stay conscious for just a little longer. And then he saw the necklace. In the darkness and relentless rain, the delicate heart-shaped pendant glimmered softly around the woman's neck, identical to the one Rebecca wore in the old photo in his glove compartment. Michael blinked, bewildered. The world swirled around him, and he couldn't tell if he was dreaming or awake. Was it a coincidence, a hallucination born from pain and trauma? Or was there something more? "The necklace," he murmured weakly, his voice strained and broken. "How?" The woman, focused on his condition, didn't grasp the importance of what he was saying. "Don't talk now. Let's get you taken care of, okay? She said gently, smiling as she propped Michael onto her shoulders, helping him away from the wreck. But that small pendant around the young nurse's neck reignited a flicker of hope in Michael. Hope he had thought lost forever. The same heart-shaped pendant that for 2 decades he had associated with the memory of Rebecca. Before he could ask any more questions, the pain enveloped him like a heavy shroud, and he finally gave in to unconsciousness. The storm raged on as the ambulance finally arrived at the scene. Amanda, the nurse who had rescued him, stayed by his side throughout the entire journey to the hospital. She didn't know what that battered, bleeding man had seen when he looked at her necklace, but something in his expression deeply unsettled her. As the ambulance sped through the wet, foggy road, Amanda clutched the necklace between her fingers, a nervous habit she'd always had. She had never known exactly where the pendant came from, but somehow she'd always felt that it held significance. While Michael was rushed into the emergency room, his fragile, injured body began to relax. Yet within him, something stirred. A thought, a possibility, a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years. And amid the darkness, one certainty stood out in his confused mind: the necklace. The sterile smell of alcohol and disinfectant invaded Michael's nostrils as he slowly opened his eyes. The fluorescent light above burned his retinas fiercely. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. His head throbbed, and a dull pain ran through the left side of his body, where the seatbelt had held him during the accident. Around him, machines monitored his vital signs, and the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the silent hospital ward. "You're awake," said a middle-aged nurse as she entered the room and adjusted his bed. "Don't worry, you're in a hospital. You were lucky to be rescued in time." Michael tried to sit up, but the pain in his body and the weight of his memories held him back. The image of Amanda wearing the heart-shaped pendant flashed through his mind like a spark, leaving him more disoriented. That necklace, he thought, feeling a tightness in his chest. It couldn't be a coincidence, not after all these years of searching for answers that never came. The nurse noticed his unease. "You need to rest. You're still very weak. Would you like me to call someone?" "The girl," Michael murmured hoarsely, his voice shaky. "The girl who rescued me." The nurse gave a gentle smile. "Oh yes, Amanda. She's one of our nurses. She was on her way back from a shift when she found you. Thanks to her, you're here, Mr. Morgan." Michael took a deep breath, feeling a knot form in his throat. He needed to see her. He needed to know more about that young woman, and especially about that necklace. Over the next few hours, Michael fought against the weakness that kept him bedridden. His mind, far from resting, was consumed by obsession. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of that pendant returned, as vivid as the old photo of Rebecca he kept. Something was happening. He could feel it. And it wasn't just a coincidence. As soon as Michael managed to stand, propping himself up on shaky arms, he asked the staff to find Amanda. He had to see her. He had to thank her, and more than anything, he had to understand. The medical team hesitated, recommending he wait a little longer, but Michael was resolute. His need to confront Amanda was stronger than his pain. Soon after, Michael found her in the nursing ward, organizing files and talking with other nurses. Amanda was focused, but as soon as she saw him, she stopped what she was doing and walked over. "I'm so glad you're feeling better," she said with a genuine smile. "How are you holding up?" Her soft voice and carefree smile hit him like a wave. Michael tried to remain steady, but the urgency gnawed at him. He needed to get to the point. I don't know how to thank you for saving my life," he began, searching for the right words, but his gaze remained fixed on her neck. The necklace was still there, swaying gently with her every movement. The same heart-shaped pendant Rebecca wore in the photo. He couldn't hold back any longer. "Amanda! That necklace!" His voice was tense, almost too anxious. "Where did you get it?" Amanda furrowed her brow, surprised by the question. "This necklace?" she asked, instinctively touching it with her fingertips, a habit she repeated unconsciously. "Oh, I've always had it. My parents told me I was already wearing it when they found me." Michael froze. "Found you?" he whispered, his heart racing. "What do you mean?" Amanda gave a nervous laugh, sensing the intensity in his gaze. "I was adopted. My parents told me I was left in a basket, as a baby, near a hospital in Denver. All I had with me was a blanket and this necklace." She shrugged, as if the story held little importance. "They never found out who left me there." The ground seemed to vanish beneath Michael's feet. Denver. 20 years ago, the time and place aligned perfectly with Rebecca's disappearance. "Do you know anything about your biological parents?" Michael asked, his voice now soft, almost a whisper. Amanda shook her head. I've always wanted to know more, but I never had many clues. The only thing I've ever felt is that this necklace is important." She held the pendant for a moment, then let it rest against her chest. Michael stared at her, feeling a surge of hope mixed with fear. Could it be? Could Amanda be Rebecca? The young woman he had desperately searched for over the past 2 decades was now standing in front of him, unaware of who she truly was. He took a deep breath, trying to control the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He needed to act carefully. He couldn't scare her away. "Amanda," he began, choosing his words with care. "What if I told you I might be able to help you learn more about your past?" She raised her eyebrows, surprised. "What do you mean?" Michael stepped a little closer, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and caution. "I know someone who can run a DNA test to help you understand more about who you are. There are no guarantees, but I think it's worth a try." Amanda hesitated for a moment. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity and a hint of suspicion. Michael smiled, though his gaze was distant, lost somewhere between the present and the past. "Because sometimes life gives us an unexpected chance to find something we thought we'd lost forever." The days following Michael's request for the DNA test passed slowly, weighed down by anxiety and anticipation. While waiting for the results, Michael found it impossible to stay away from Amanda. An inexplicable force seemed to draw him toward her, a strange sense of familiarity he couldn't ignore. Each interaction stirred memories he thought were lost, rekindling hopes he had buried years ago. Amanda, for her part, also felt a sense of comfort and curiosity whenever she spoke with Michael. There was something hauntingly familiar about him, as if she had known that melancholic gaze in another life. During one of their meetings at the hospital, Michael showed up with a calm expression, though his eyes still carried the weight of years of suffering. "I hope you don't mind, Amanda. I was nearby and thought I'd ask if you'd like to grab a coffee," he said, trying to stay composed, though anxiety gnawed at him. Amanda smiled, a kind smile but tinged with a trace of suspicion. She still didn't understand why this man, whom she barely knew, seemed so invested in her. Yet she couldn't say no. Something in the way he spoke and looked at her made her feel safe. Seated at a cafe near the hospital, with steaming cups of coffee between them, the conversation began to flow naturally. Michael watched Amanda as if each of her gestures was a piece of a puzzle he was struggling to solve. "You know," Michael began, breaking the silence, "you remind me of someone very important to me. My daughter, Rebecca." His voice faltered as he said the name he had avoided for so long. "She disappeared many years ago," he continued, staring into the dark liquid in his cup. "And since then, my life has never been the same." Amanda remained silent for a moment, surprised by his sudden openness. "It must be so hard to carry that pain for so long," she said gently. Michael nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the distant memory. Yes, not a day goes by that I don't wonder what happened to her. If she's alive, if she's forgotten me. His voice trembled, as if every word was a monumental effort. Amanda gripped her cup tightly, as though trying to absorb the tension in the air. I know what it's like to feel like a part of you is missing, she murmured. I've always wanted to know more about where I came from. My adoptive parents are wonderful, but I've always wondered why I was left behind, who I really am. Michael felt a pang of pain in his chest. It was the same question he had asked himself about Rebecca. And now, sitting across from Amanda, he had the strange sense that he might finally have an answer. But that possibility filled him with both hope and fear. In the days that followed, Michael and Amanda continued to meet. With each conversation, Michael shared fragments of Rebecca's story. She was so full of joy, Michael recalled with a bittersweet smile. She loved to swing in the garden for hours, laughing as if nothing in the world could ever trouble her. Amanda listened closely, as if the memories he shared were her own. At times, she felt a strange familiarity in Michael's stories, though she couldn't be sure if it was merely a coincidence or the result of her growing empathy for him. Michael, too, noticed gestures and behaviors that reminded him of Rebecca. Amanda's habit of running her fingers through her hair mirrored his daughter's, and the way her smile tilted slightly brought echoes of the past. With each small detail, Michael's conviction grew. He allowed himself to imagine, if only for a moment, that Amanda truly was Rebecca. One cold evening, Michael and Amanda walked through the hospital gardens, surrounded by the fresh scent of damp earth. The silence between them was comfortable, yet charged with unspoken thoughts. Michael knew he could no longer keep his feelings bottled up. The truth had to come out before it consumed him completely. "Amanda!" he began, stopping and turning to face her directly. His heart pounded in his chest. "I need to tell you something. It might sound strange, but I can't keep this to myself anymore." Amanda looked at him curiously, her eyes locked on his. "What is it?" she asked softly, though the tension in Michael's voice made her uneasy. Michael took a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. "I think you might be my daughter, Amanda. I think you might be Rebecca." Amanda blinked, stunned. For a moment, his words hung in the air, leaving her speechless. "What?" she whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. "What do you mean?" "The necklace," Michael explained, almost in a whisper, his voice heavy with the pain, hope, and fear he had carried for the past 20 years. "That necklace is identical to the one Rebecca was wearing when she disappeared. The story about the hospital. Everything lines up." Amanda's heart raced. The revelation was as unsettling as it was profound, yet somehow it made an eerie kind of sense. She couldn't explain it, but she felt a deep connection to Michael's words, as if a hidden part of her own story was finally being uncovered. "I know it's a lot to take in," Michael said, noticing her bewildered expression. "But I had to tell you, I have to believe that you're my daughter." Amanda reached for the heart-shaped pendant around her neck, her fingers trembling. The thought that she could be Rebecca frightened her, but it also stirred a strange curiosity. What if Michael was right? What if, after all these years of uncertainty, she was finally about to discover who she truly was? The silence between them stretched. Amanda looked at Michael, seeing the fear and hope reflected in his eyes. She wasn't sure if she believed his story, but she knew she couldn't ignore the possibility. I don't know what to think," Amanda admitted honestly. "This is a lot, but..." She paused, struggling to find the right words. "I think we need to wait for the test results." Michael nodded, his smile tinged with sadness. "Yes, we just need to wait." As the cold wind swept through the garden, both knew that the waiting would be unbearable. Yet at the same time, they felt that something essential had shifted between them. Something was about to be revealed, something that could either unite them or tear them apart forever. Shortly after discussing the possibility of Michael being her biological father, Amanda and Michael went together to the lab he had recommended to perform the DNA test. The procedure was simple, a quick blood draw, but one laden with tension and expectation. "The results should be ready in a few days," the lab attendant informed them with a polite smile. For Michael, those days felt like an eternity. The waiting was unbearable. Although hope burned within him, the fear of another disappointment haunted him every second. What if Amanda isn't Rebecca? What if he was wrong again, condemning himself to live forever with doubt and emptiness? Amanda also felt restless. While the idea of being Rebecca seemed absurd, something about it both attracted and terrified her. She had grown used to living without knowing her origins, but now the possibility of discovering her true family was both tantalizingly close and frighteningly uncertain. The days dragged by, heavy with anxiety and silence. Michael tried to keep himself busy, but nothing seemed to ease the growing anticipation. He visited the hospital almost daily, meeting Amanda and slowly building a connection with her. With every meeting, his hope grew, but so did his fear. Then, the day finally came. Michael received a notification on his phone while alone at home. The message from the lab indicated that the results were ready and could be accessed online. He took a deep breath, feeling his heart hammering in his chest. His hands trembled as he opened the email and clicked on the attached document. For a moment, he hesitated, as if the answer he had waited for all these years could change his life forever, for better or worse. With one final breath, Michael read the document. Genetic match confirmed, 99.9%. Amanda Cooper is Rebecca Morgan. For a moment, Michael was paralyzed. He read the result over and over again, struggling to believe it. His search, his hope, and his pain of 20 years had finally led to an answer. Amanda was Rebecca. His daughter was alive. Emotion overwhelmed him like an avalanche. He sank into the armchair, tears streaming down his face as he clutched his phone tightly. Joy, relief, and indescribable happiness washed over him. After so many years of suffering and loneliness, the truth was finally before him. Rebecca wasn't lost. She was right there, standing before him as Amanda. But along with the joy came fear, creeping over him like a cold shadow. How would he tell Amanda? How could he reveal to her that her entire life had an origin she had never imagined? How would he explain that her adoptive parents, whom she loved, weren't her only family? And what if Amanda didn't believe him? What if the revelation drove her away forever? Michael knew he had to tell her the truth, but he had to do it carefully. Later that same afternoon, Michael met Amanda at the cafe near the hospital, his heart still heavy with anxiety. Amanda was seated, absent-mindedly twirling the heart-shaped pendant between her fingers, as she often did. When she saw him, she gave a faint smile. "So, do you know the results?" Amanda asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Michael sat down across from her, trying to stay calm, though the weight of the truth was almost unbearable. He placed his phone on the table but didn't open the email immediately. Instead, he looked into her eyes, feeling a wave of emotions threatening to overflow. "Yes," he finally said, his voice trembling and soft, laden with meaning. "I know." Amanda tilted her head, intrigued but also concerned. "And what do they say?" Michael took a deep breath. "Amanda," he began, choosing his words carefully. This moment was too delicate. "The test confirmed it. You are Rebecca. You are my daughter." Amanda froze, as if the world around her had stopped. Michael's words echoed in her mind like a slow wave, and she blinked, struggling to process what she had just heard. "What?" she whispered, incredulous. How? The test confirmed it, Michael repeated, his voice low and filled with emotion. You are Rebecca Morgan, my daughter. Amanda leaned back in her chair, her gaze drifting to the table between them. It seemed impossible to believe, yet at the same time the information felt strangely fitting. The necklace, the adoption, the hospital. It all made sense, but the realization was overwhelming. This doesn't make sense, she murmured, shaking her head. How can I be your daughter? Michael leaned forward slightly, his eyes filled with tenderness and understanding. I know it's a lot to take in. I'm not trying to take anything away from your parents or you. They'll always be your parents. But you're also my daughter. I was robbed of you for 20 years, but now you're here. Amanda reached for the heart-shaped pendant, gripping it tightly. Her heart felt torn between two realities, and she didn't know how to handle it. Part of her wanted to deny everything, to return to the simple life she knew, but another part wanted to believe. She wanted to know who she truly was. This is too much, she murmured. I don't know what to think. Michael placed his hand gently over hers. You don't have to decide anything now, he said softly. His touch was light but full of meaning. I just needed you to know. I'm not here to pressure you, Amanda. I only want a chance to get to know you. Amanda didn't pull her hand away. Something about his words touched her deeply, as if there was a truth there she couldn't yet fully understand. So, what now? What do we do? She asked with a heavy sigh, still grappling with everything. Michael smiled, a mixture of sadness and hope in his expression. Now we take it one step at a time. No rush. I'm here, Amanda. I always have been. The two sat in silence for a few minutes, each absorbing the enormity of the revelation. Michael felt relief, but he knew this was only the first step. Rebuilding what had been lost wouldn't be easy. Amanda, on the other hand, was confused, but a new door had opened before her, a door that could finally answer the questions she had carried in silence for so long. The days following the discovery that Amanda was indeed Rebecca were filled with conflicting emotions. Michael and Amanda were slowly building a new connection, but the weight of the past lingered heavily over them. They both knew the road ahead would be difficult. 20 years of absence couldn't be erased easily, but they were making a mutual effort to move forward. The hope of finally reuniting with Rebecca gave Michael a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in decades. However, the shadows of the past continued to haunt him. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Rebecca's disappearance than he knew. Though fate had finally brought Amanda back, the question of how she had ended up abandoned in Denver gnawed at him. Something didn't add up. He needed to understand what had really happened all those years ago. One afternoon, while Amanda was at the hospital, Michael sat alone in his house in Houston, lost in thought. He revisited old family photos and forgotten documents, searching for any detail that could shed light on the past. Sitting in his armchair, he held the picture of Rebecca, the same one he had kept in his glove compartment. Her innocent smile seemed to mock the suffering he had carried for so long. Then, memories long buried began to resurface. He recalled old arguments with his sister, Natalie. She had never hidden her resentment toward the attention Michael received from their parents. At the time, Natalie complained that Michael was the family favorite, the perfect son, the successful businessman, the devoted father. Things worsened when Natalie learned she couldn't have children. The news devastated her, and the pain intensified when Mary, Michael's wife, became pregnant. While Natalie faced her personal tragedy, Michael's family was celebrating the arrival of Rebecca. Their parents had shifted all their attention toward Michael, eagerly awaiting their granddaughter's birth. For Natalie, it felt like she was being pushed out of her own family. When Mary died during childbirth, Michael became a tragic hero in the eyes of their parents. He was the grieving father who had lost his wife but still had his perfect daughter, Rebecca. The entire family rallied around Michael, leaving Natalie in complete isolation. Bitterness and jealousy grew within her, corroding her heart. Rebecca's birth was not only a moment of joy for the family, it marked the moment Natalie felt irreversibly cast out, and that filled her with resentment. A chilling thought crept into Michael's mind. What if Natalie had something to do with Rebecca's disappearance? Her distant, evasive behavior at the time, especially whenever Rebecca was mentioned, now seemed to carry a sinister meaning. Could she have interfered directly in Rebecca's fate? Michael knew he had to confront his sister. That evening, Michael made a call he had avoided for years. His relationship with Natalie had eroded over time, and this conversation was one he dreaded. She answered with a hesitant voice, surprised by the unexpected contact. "Michael, what a surprise! Is everything okay?" Michael wasted no time. "Natalie, we need to talk. About Rebecca." There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. Natalie seemed to take a deep breath before responding. "Michael, that was so long ago. Haven't you moved on?" "You don't move on from something like that," Michael replied firmly, "and I think you know more than you ever told me." Natalie's voice wavered. "What are you suggesting?" Michael didn't hold back. "I think you had something to do with her disappearance, and I want the truth, Natalie. Now." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael could feel the weight of his sister's hesitation, and in that moment he knew he was right. "Natalie," he pressed, his voice low but filled with menace. "No more lies. Tell me what you did." At last, Natalie could no longer hold back. Her voice trembled, laden with guilt and fear. "All right, I'll tell you, but it wasn't what you think." Michael gripped the phone tightly, his heart pounding. "Go on." Natalie's voice shifted between anger and remorse as she began to speak. "I was so angry back then, Michael. Nothing I did was ever enough. Mom and Dad only cared about you, and I was invisible. When I found out I couldn't have children, I thought maybe they'd support me. But no. That's when Mary got pregnant, and they focused entirely on you and your family." Michael clenched his fists, rage boiling inside him, but he forced himself to stay silent. "When Rebecca was born, and Mary died, it was the final blow for me," Natalie continued, her voice cracking with sobs. "Suddenly, you were the perfect victim, the hero who deserved all the sympathy, and I was left behind. So you decided to ruin my life," Michael growled, disbelief and fury dripping from his words. "I didn't want to ruin anything," Natalie cried, desperate. I wanted you to know what it felt like to lose someone, just for a little while. I thought if I took Rebecca away, someone would find her and bring her back. I never meant for her to disappear forever." Michael closed his eyes, feeling a wave of despair crash over him. His own sister, consumed by jealousy and pain, had abandoned his daughter as if she were nothing more than a discarded object, all because she couldn't handle the attention he received. "You left her alone, Natalie," Michael shouted, his voice filled with anguish and fury. "A helpless baby in the middle of nowhere. What if no one had found her? What if she had—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of that possibility was too much to bear. Natalie sobbed uncontrollably on the other end of the line. I know I was wrong, but I was scared, Michael. I was terrified of telling the truth. I thought I'd lose all of you forever." Michael gripped the phone tightly, his heart torn between rage and sorrow. Everything he had endured, the years of searching, the constant pain of loss, had been caused by a petty, reckless act of revenge. He took a deep breath, struggling to regain control. "I will never forgive you, Natalie." His voice was cold and final. "Never." Natalie continued to sob, but Michael hung up without another word. There was nothing left to say. What she had done was unforgivable, and he wouldn't allow that dark past to touch Amanda now that he had finally found her. Michael sat in silence for a long time, the phone still in his hand. The revelation had devastated him more than he could have imagined. His own sister had been responsible for the greatest nightmare of his life. But now he had Amanda back, and he would do anything to protect her, even if it meant hiding the truth about Natalie. Amanda had already endured so much. Learning that her aunt had deliberately abandoned her would be too heavy a burden to bear right now. Michael knew he couldn't protect Amanda from the truth for long. The revelation about Natalie was too heavy to keep hidden, and he had to be honest with his daughter, no matter how painful it might be. One evening, after a quiet dinner at his house in Houston, Michael decided it was time to tell her everything. Amanda, sensing the tension in his behavior, had grown suspicious. He knew there was no point in delaying any further. "Amanda, I need to tell you something about your disappearance," he began, his voice weighted with seriousness. "There's a truth you need to know, and it's worse than I ever imagined." Amanda furrowed her brow, her heart racing. She could feel this would change everything. "What is it?" she asked, tense. Michael took a deep breath and revealed the truth. "Natalie, my sister. She was the one behind everything. Out of jealousy, she took you from me. She abandoned you, believing someone would find you and return you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amanda covered her mouth, overwhelmed with disbelief. "Your sister, my aunt?" she asked, her voice quivering between shock and anger. The cruelty of the revelation was unbearable. Michael nodded slowly, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I know it's a lot to process, and I'm so sorry you have to hear this now." Amanda sat silently for a few seconds, but the rage inside her flared like wildfire. "I need to talk to her," Amanda said abruptly, standing from the table. "Now!" Soon after, they found themselves standing in front of Natalie's house. She still lived alone in the old family home, surrounded by remnants of a lost past. Natalie looked surprised to see them, especially Amanda. "What are you two doing here?" Natalie asked nervously. Amanda didn't hesitate. Her eyes burned with fury and pain. "I know what you did. I know it was you who abandoned me when I was just a baby." Natalie turned pale, as though her worst nightmare had finally come true. She opened her mouth to speak, but Amanda pressed on. "How could you do that? I was a child. How could you abandon me out of jealousy?" Tears streamed down Natalie's face. "Amanda, I never meant for you to disappear forever," she said, her voice trembling. "I was so hurt, so full of anger. I thought someone would find you in a few days. I never wanted this to happen. And you never did anything to fix it?" Amanda shouted, her pain bleeding through every word. "You let me grow up away from my family, away from my father, while he suffered all these years, all because you felt unfairly treated?" Natalie broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I know what I did was unforgivable," she cried, covering her face with her hands. "I lived in fear and regret all these years, but I didn't know how to tell the truth. I was scared of losing everything." Amanda crossed her arms, her expression hard and unyielding. Natalie's tears had no effect on her. "You already lost everything, Natalie. The moment you abandoned me, you lost any chance of being part of my life." Michael stood quietly, his heart heavy. He no longer felt anger, only profound and irreversible sadness. Natalie was a shadow of who she had once been, consumed by her own regret. But that didn't change what she had done. Desperate for redemption, Natalie turned to Michael. "Please, Michael, forgive me. I never meant to destroy you. I was weak, hurt. I don't know how it went this far. Please." Michael shook his head, the pain evident in his eyes. "I can't, Natalie. You took the most precious thing from me. There's no forgiveness for that." Natalie collapsed to the floor, sobbing like a lost child. "All I wanted was for someone to see me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amanda gave her one last look, her gaze cold and resolute. "I won't carry your regret, Natalie. That burden is yours alone." Michael and Amanda left Natalie's house in silence. The air was heavy, but along with the pain came a sense of liberation. Both knew the past could never be erased, but they would no longer let it control their future. "Are you okay?" Michael asked as they walked toward the car. Amanda took a deep breath, feeling the cool night breeze on her face. "I don't know, but I'm ready to move forward." Michael smiled sadly. "And I'll be here, for whatever you need." Moving into Michael's house in Houston was a difficult step for Amanda. Leaving behind the life she had known, even temporarily, was a challenge, but something inside her urged her to try. Discovering her true identity had left her disoriented, and being near Michael seemed to be the only way to understand who she truly was: Amanda, Rebecca, or perhaps both. Michael welcomed her with open arms. Having Amanda in his home filled part of the emptiness he had carried for 2 decades. Yet he knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Building a relationship after so much lost time would require patience and courage from both of them. Life had given them no other choice. In the beginning, everything felt strange. The routines in Michael's large house were quiet and tinged with unspoken expectations. Amanda explored the rooms slowly, as if rediscovering every corner. There were old photos on the walls, memories of a past to which she had never consciously belonged. It was surreal to see images of the mother she had never known, and objects that should have been part of her childhood but weren't. Michael respected her space, offering silent support. He knew that forcing a connection would only be counterproductive, so he simply remained present whenever she needed him. Some nights, they ate dinner together in silence. On other nights, they talked about simple things, books, movies, or even her work at the hospital. But there were moments when the memories of the past crashed over Amanda like violent waves. "I feel like I'm living someone else's life," Amanda said one evening, staring at an old photo of Rebecca as a 2-year-old. "It's strange, like I'm taking a place that was never mine." Michael looked at her with tenderness. "This place was always yours, Rebecca. I was just waiting for you to come back to it." Amanda forced a smile, but she wasn't ready to fully embrace her new identity. She was Amanda to herself, but Rebecca to the man sitting before her. Reconciling these two parts of herself felt like trying to complete a puzzle with missing pieces. Over the following weeks, Amanda and Michael faced emotional highs and lows. Some conversations brought comfort, while others stirred frustration and pain. Amanda wrestled with the unfairness of fate, while Michael carried the guilt of lost years, even knowing the past was beyond his control. There were moments when Amanda withdrew, lost in her own thoughts. At other times, Michael was overwhelmed by painful memories, fearing he might lose Amanda again, one way or another. Yet with each passing day, they found small ways to grow closer. Michael began to show Amanda glimpses of the childhood she had missed, like the garden where he used to push Rebecca on the swing as a baby, or the old toy chest he had kept for 20 years. These moments didn't erase the past, but they helped build a bridge to the future. The most meaningful night came unexpectedly. It was a quiet evening in Houston, with a gentle breeze drifting through the open windows and a sky full of stars above. Michael and Amanda sat together in the garden, surrounded by the fresh scent of flowers. "I remember you telling me about this swing," Amanda said, lightly swinging her feet as she sat on a bench. "I can almost picture you pushing me and laughing, even though I don't have a memory of it." Michael smiled, a wistful, bittersweet smile. "That was one of my favorite moments with you. It made me forget everything, even if just for a while." A comfortable silence settled between them. Amanda glanced at Michael, seeing not just the man sitting beside her, but the father he had always been, even in her absence. It was a genuine, intimate moment, and something within her softened. She took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. "You know, I think I'm ready to try," she said quietly. Michael turned toward her, curiosity and hope lighting up his eyes. "Try what?" Amanda hesitated for just a moment, but then, with a shy and sincere smile, she spoke the word Michael had waited 20 years to hear. "Dad." Michael froze, the weight of emotion welling in his chest as tears stung his eyes. He didn't try to hide them. These tears were born from happiness, not sorrow. "Rebecca," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." Amanda felt a weight lift from her heart, as if she had finally found where she belonged. Calling him Dad wasn't just a word, it was a beginning, a promise that despite the scars of the past, they could build something new together. The two sat quietly in the garden, gazing at the stars and allowing the moment to mark the beginning of a new chapter. Neither believed the past would ever be forgotten. Some wounds leave permanent marks, but now they had the chance to create new memories and reclaim what had been stolen from them. "I think we can start over, Dad," Amanda said, feeling at peace with both the identities she carried. "I may never forget who I was as Amanda, but I can be Rebecca too. I can be your daughter." Michael smiled, a smile filled with hope. "We can start from where we are now. It doesn't matter how much time we lost. What matters is what we do with the time we have now." The night remained calm as father and daughter sat side by side in the garden, savoring the moment they had waited so long for. They both knew life would bring challenges, but this time they would face them together. Amanda and Michael made a silent vow. The past would not be a prison. It would simply be a part of who they were. And together they were ready to move forward, building new memories and trusting that the love uniting them now was stronger than any pain the past could ever hold. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.